Once, back in 1983, when creating the RG250 Gamma model, Suzuki engineers were among the first to decide to transfer purely racing technologies to mass civilian production. The Suzuki GSX or 750F was a true replica of a combat racing motorcycle, bringing great popularity to the Japanese. You could say the Suzuki GSX or 750 was born in a racing paddock. Such are the genes in the family of Gixxers. In the 80s, the most prestigious competitions for four-stroke motorcycles were considered to be the Endurance World Championship. Suzuki's success story in these competitions began with the GS1000 or XR41 racing prototype. Due to its distinctive equipment, it was called a racing motorcycle with headlights, which rightfully is the ancestor of the entire GSXR family. In the first 2 years, they couldn't secure the championship title, but in '83, the Leader Class XR1, under the control of Hervermont and Richard Haben, managed to win the FAM World Endurance Championship season after a series of effective victories. '84, the regulations. The engine displacement of motorcycles was limited to 750 cubic centimeters. Thus, the concept of creating an accessible racing replica emerged, which could practically move on public roads without changes and participate in competitions of the highest level, from Tourist Trophy to Le Mans, Endurance, and AMA Superbike. The first production models of the Suzuki GSX or 750 appeared in March 1985. The concept premiered in September 1984 at the Intermo exhibition in West Germany. For its time, it was an event. The motorcycle, and subsequently the entire family, quickly earned the nickname Gixxer. The project was overseen by engine engineers Tatsuna Fuji and designer Hiroshi Fuji. In a short time, they created a new legend in the motorcycle world based on a racing prototype. In the very first GSX or 750, all the technologies from the racing prototype were transferred wholesale. The motorcycle received an aluminum duplex frame made of rectangular section tubes, an aluminum swing arm connected to a monoshock without a progressive linkage, a full floater system, 18-inch wheel rims, and 4-piston front calipers. Tatsuna Fuji took the air-cooled engine from the GS1000R as a base and significantly refined it. Despite the rising popularity of liquid-cooled engines, the talented engineer relied on his own sense of aesthetics. He upgraded the air cooling to air well cooling. The 748 cubic centimeters power unit with a short stroke configuration was equipped with a small well cooler and a dual chamber pump. This ensures lubrication of all friction parts and working pairs, as well as cooling of the piston undersides. This cooling scheme was internally named SASC, Suzuki Advanced Cooling System. It allowed for improvements in thermal management, as well as in size and the number of parts. There was no need to install a huge radiator, a pump, and a heavy jacket on the cylinders. The cylinder head is equipped with two camshafts, driven by a single row chain located in the middle between the two pairs of cylinders. 16 valves are angled at 21 degrees into the combustion chambers, designed with the TSCC system for dual swirl of the fuel mixture. In the fuel system, it was decided to abandon the popular vacuum carburetors in favor of more efficient flat slide carburetors. This move resulted in two polar opposite effects. On one hand, there was a wild throttle response, which is good for realizing the motorcycle's potential. But on the other hand, there was insufficient power at low revs. The combination of a monumental appearance with endurance-style fairings positioned behind the front wheel axis and a fierce engine. In the early models, the GSX-R largely established the rebellious reputation that fans of the brand still appreciate today. When you see this little adrenaline factory in person, it seems as if it was designed to survive the epicenter of a nuclear explosion. The parts are large and sturdy not only on the outside but also on the inside. The Suzuki GSX-R 750 engine easily adapts to all kinds of Atma and turbo tuning. In stock, it withstands loads under which the crankshaft of its closest competitors would step out for a breather through the crankcase. The bet on SSC and TSCC really paid off. The engine turned out powerful, with a claimed 100 horsepower at thousands of revolutions per minute. Very compact and lightweight. An important feature of the GSX-R 750 of that generation is its overall miniaturization compared to the mastodons produced at that time. The dry weight of the motorcycle is only 176 kilograms. In terms of dimensions, the 750 only slightly exceeded civilian motorcycles of smaller displacements. In 1986, a very small series of 200 units was released for homologation in AMA and superbike races, making it practically inaccessible for the average buyer. The limited racing special version Suzuki GSX-R 750 RG was fully equipped with racing technologies. The standard equipment included a gearbox with close-ratio gears, a dry clutch, a more efficient exhaust and intake, and a shortened wheelbase. A front fork with a valve like the GSX-R 1100 model and Bridgestone Badlax BT045 tires, with the aim of improving handling and minimizing losses among racers and the general public. In 1986, the GSX-R 750G received a wheelbase extended by 25mm and radial tires, like on the racing version. In 1987, the GSX-R 750H was equipped with a knee system front fork, and the fuel tank capacity was increased to 21 liters. The GSX-R made an explosive impact. For the first time, it became possible to go to a store, buy a real racing motorcycle, put license plates on it, and conquer public roads. It erased the line between a racing motorcycle and a civilian one. And even though today's sport bikes are far from real racing, today it's more about marketing, but back then it was still genuine. Kawasaki and its Ninja motorcycles are celebrated worldwide for the explosive thrill they offer. It all started with the first motorcycle bearing the Ninja badge, the Kawasaki GPZ 900R. This motorcycle is a legend that changed our perception of modern motorsport and is considered the grandfather of today's powerful bikes. It introduced a bunch of new technologies that made riding motorcycles a lot more fun and a lot easier. 900R was powerful, striking, and agile, and above all, it was a motorcycle that changed the world. The Kawasaki GPZ 900R was the bike that changed the course of modern motorcycling and the first technological marvel to wear the Ninja badge. This name later became a household term in America, and if you had a sport bike, almost everyone would ask you, is that a Ninja? 900R, also known as the Ninja 900, was a sport bike that took the world by storm. It hit the market in 1984 and had a really long run. Kawasaki has kept a low profile with the GPZ 900R, with its concept and development kept under wraps. For more than 6 years, no one knew about the legendary motorcycle that was being prepared, and the lack of the internet made the situation much easier. One of the main reasons for this was the insane list of technological features that were first in their segment. It was clear that Kawasaki didn't want anyone, especially their competitors, to get wind of it. Ninja 900 is equipped with the latest 908 cubic centimeters engine, which was the world's first 16-valve inline engine, a liquid-cooled 4-cylinder engine. It produced 115 horsepower at 9,500 RPM. The power was transmitted to the rear wheels through a 6-speed transmission. The engine was more economical and responsive than its competitors, thanks to liquid cooling and a 16-valve system. This was also the company's first motorcycle with electronic ignition, which was pretty new for the early 80s. Another interesting fact about the first Ninja was that it first sparked the legendary speed wars that are still very prominent among Japanese manufacturers today. At one time, Kawasaki was well known for setting speed records. The GPZ 900R didn't break that tradition either and went down in history as the first motorcycle to break the 240 km/h barrier, earning the title of the fastest motorcycle at the time of its launch. With a little tuning, the bike already hit 270 km/h. It was pure madness. For that time, its new Ninja badge was already making waves. All of this was made possible by some impressive structural changes. The engineers removed the lower part of the frame to cut down on unnecessary weight, and for the first time used a 4-cylinder inline engine as the foundation of the design. The engine was positioned lower and closer to the front wheel. This provided impressive stiffness and helped reduce weight and the center of gravity, which significantly improved handling. The aluminum swing arm was successful in racing. The Unitrack monoshock, which had 2 settings, provided excellent grip both on the track and on the highway. Another innovation was the AVDS system. AVDS consisted of an additional hydraulic cylinder located at the bottom of each fork leg and connected to the calipers. The idea was to use the brake fluid pressure generated in the calipers to close the valve via plunger, which would block the passage to the fork oil, thereby increasing the stiffness of the forks. A stiffer suspension reduced dive. Chain tensioning using an eccentric. The result is a motorcycle with exceptional handling, capable of surprising almost anyone with its characteristics. It also features a new crankshaft counterbalancer, which helps eliminate almost all vibration and makes this Ninja as smooth as possible. It was a very easy bike to ride, despite such a complex technological setup. The Kawasaki GPZ 900R was produced for a very long time, from 1984 to 2003, and during this time, it remained virtually unchanged. To be honest, when it was released, it was way ahead of its competitors, which is why by the end of its production run, it was still at the top. Tom Cruise, an actor who is known to push the boundaries of his abilities every time he gets a chance to appear on the big screen. Top Gun is a cult movie that is still as exciting as ever, and Tom Cruise decided to ride a Kawasaki GPZ 900R in this movie. It was right after its debut that the Ninja became wildly popular in the US. A daring actor on a legendary motorcycle. It doesn't get more convincing than that. Well, Top Gun is getting a sequel, and Maverick has swapped his iconic GPZ 900R for the Kawasaki H2, another legend. 900R was a special sport bike that took Kawasaki to new heights in the arms race. The motorcycle is possibly one of the most significant bikes from Kawasaki of that era, and it has strong and supportive fans. The arrival of the GPZ also marked a new era in road racing. For several years, the motorcycle outperformed its competitors Harley and Suzuki, especially since it made its debut in the AMA and Superbike races. The motorcycle has won the Bike of the Year award for several years in a row, according to various American and European publications. And of course, the WMA Superbike Championship title. It was right after this model hit the races that American officials had to limit the engine sizes of superbikes to 750 cubic centimeters. Kawasaki engineers spent many days in the wind tunnel working on the GPZ plastic. The Ninja fairings turned out to be unusual, but very effective. As time has shown, especially at speeds over 200 km/h, the Ninja 900 was incredibly fast on difficult tracks, and he proved it when Jeff Johnson, riding a 900R, won the production motorcycle class at the Le Mans race in '84. Everyone knows that it was Honda that created the world's first superbike with an inline-4, but it was Kawasaki that gave us a glimpse into the future of motorsport by creating the legendary GPZ 900R. The motorcycle that tested the company's new technologies later became widely used in many models.
Based on it, one of the most iconic sport motorcycles of modern times was built. It perfectly reflected the brand's philosophy. YZF 1000R Thunder Ace is one of the brand's iconic motorcycles. The arrival of a new motorcycle model is always surrounded by an exciting aura. At the opening ceremony, you can often see brightly smiling members of the development team proudly presenting the new model. The bike is photographed from all sides, and famous journalists sit on it for the first time, which gives additional impetus to the team's important event. And although this is rarely mentioned at these formal events, it's the technologies that make the main contribution to the shape and final characteristics of new models, lying at the heart of production. This work usually happens behind the scenes, but it forms a substantial foundation and is irreplaceable. The core of Yamaha Monozukuri, a unique approach to the development, production, and marketing of products that emphasizes craftsmanship and perfection. Since its founding in 1955, Yamaha Motor has prioritized manufacturing technologies and continues to develop and refine this expertise. A great example of this philosophy is the YZF 1000 Thunder Ace model. And while it may not have set all sorts of speed records or topped the sales charts at the time of its release, the technologies built into it made all subsequent models from the brand some of the best in their class. For its time, the bike was really good. It had a pretty powerful engine, a chassis that could handle it, and excellent brakes. In other words, it was pretty much the benchmark sport bike of its time. This is confirmed by the fact that it was based on the YZF 1000R Thunder AC that the first generation of the iconic R1 model appeared in 1998. The 4-stroke, 4-cylinder inline engine with liquid cooling and 5 valves per cylinder was developed based on the FZR 1000 engine and produced a pretty impressive 145 horsepower for that time. And this is the power of the first generation ZX11, which, although not significantly, has a smaller displacement. In addition to the lightweight crankshaft, the new engine received forged pistons, a first for production motorcycles. Later, the forging will go into production on all sports models of the brand, such as the R6, R7, and R1. And while today forged pistons in an engine don't seem like anything out of the ordinary, back in the mid-90s, it was a huge leap for the motorcycle world. In addition to their sleeker design and lighter weight, these pistons were also stronger and more durable. This allowed for the creation of an engine with higher RPMs that was more reliable and also had better fuel efficiency. In a word, they brought nothing but benefits. The peak power could have been higher, but the Genesis engine, which is what the entire line of flexible, multi-valve, innovative, high-performance Yamaha engines was called. In the 80s and 90s, the Thunder AC had a nice mid-range feel, so the engine starts pulling from 2000 RPM. There's explosive power that only ends in the red zone of the tachometer. The throttle position sensors and the patented exhaust valve on the exhaust improved throttle response, and the engine revved up pretty quickly for its time. Yamaha was the first to develop a system for changing the internal cross-section of the exhaust system, thereby achieving maximum power throughout the entire range. Their exhaust is located between the 4 exhaust pipes and the muffler. The power valve is closed in the low to medium speed range, thereby reducing the pipe cross-section, and open at higher ones, increasing it. Its opening and closing at given engine speeds is controlled electronically by means of a servo motor and cables. And if you twist every gear into the red zone, you may find that you are almost on track for a new speed record. This was further reinforced by Yamaha's official statements about the bike's serious aerodynamics. Vitali revolutionary engine, 4.38mm, Mikuni carburetor. The 5-speed gearbox, combined with the chain drive, does a great job of ensuring that the bike accelerates well. Thanks to this transmission, this sport bike can quickly change its riding style if the rider desires. The rear swing arm, along with the monoshock, has all the adjustments, and its travel is 120mm. The front fork gear is also adjustable as desired, and its travel is exactly the same. The rear brake features a 245mm disc and a 2-piston caliper. At the front there is a pair of 298mm discs, complete with 4-piston calipers. All this still looks quite decent today, despite the fact that the fork is not upside down and the brakes are not radial. The aluminum Delta box frame is inherited from the YZF 1000R. Considering the average fuel consumption of 6 liters per 100 kilometers, the local tank capacity of 20 liters is quite acceptable. The curb weight of the YZF 1000 Thunder ACE is 224 kilograms, while the dry weight is 198 kilograms. The dimensions of this bike are average. The wheelbase is 1,430 millimeters. The seat height is 815 millimeters. The model has an interesting interior that seems to be frozen at the turn of the millennium and the eras in the motorcycle industry. This is not a super modern sports bike, nor is it an old boxy classic sports bike. The YZF 1000 Thunder ACE looks unique, but at the same time fully complies with the class framework and overall design. While the Tundra doesn't have the sharp handling of, say, a 750 Gixxer, it has more than enough bite and is more stable at speed. After all, the motorcycle can reach a top speed of 275 kilometers per hour, but it's pretty good considering the slightly smaller engine displacement. Yamaha didn't have any kind of inertia boost either. Combining the grace and power of the FZR 1000 engine with the class-leading, lightweight, and agile chassis made the Thunder ACE a versatile motorcycle, feeling right at home on both country roads and in urban settings. And almost 20 years later, even after the production of this model ceased, it is still highly valued on the secondary market. But the main thing is that the YZF 1000 Thunder ACE was a true testing ground for the company's engineering ideas. These ideas later found their way into a number of Yamaha sport models. Harley-Davidson, whose engine was developed by engineering geniuses from Porsche, the company's first aluminum motorcycle, the first engine with liquid cooling, and many more breaks from the traditions of Milwaukee. This is the story of how the most unconventional motorcycle from Harley-Davidson forever changed the company's conservative approach to manufacturing and helped it gain worldwide recognition. The V-Rod is probably the boldest move in the entire history of the brand. Its full name is VRSCA V-Rod, where V stands for V-twin engine, R for racing, South for street, C for custom, and A was intended by the manufacturer to signify that it is the first representative of a new generation of Harley-Davidson, complementing the existing Sportsters, Dyna-Glide, and Soft Ales of that time. The story goes that the great Willie G. Davidson wanted the various parts of the V-Rod to be made of aluminum so much that he simply sent them daily emails with one word, aluminum, until they finally just stopped reading the messages, and he stepped back. But what made the brand, known for its ultra-conservative, true-to-form motorcycles, fundamentally change its direction? As mentioned earlier, Harley-Davidson motorcycles have always been renowned for their authentic, albeit conservative, architecture. The blame for this lies with the brand's fans, who prevented the engineers in Milwaukee to implement innovations in their favorite motorcycle models. But at the beginning of the new millennium, the prestigious motorcycle brand needed a new audience. But how do you attract new customers when many manufacturers have long since learned to make motorcycles that are not only as good as, but sometimes even better than, and most importantly, more reliable than your flagship models? The popularity of reliable Japanese technology in the American market at that time was evident, and it was no longer provoking outrage even among the most die-hard bikers. They themselves began to switch to them. Harley-Davidson understood this well and was forced to turn to a company that has always embodied quality engineering: Porsche. Collaborating with the Germans was not a first for Harley-Davidson. Back in 1976, Porsche was developing a project for Americans involving a V-shaped water-cooled overhead valve twin 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engine called Nova. A total of 30 engines and 12 operational motorcycles were built, but company's financial problems forced the project to be shut down. In the case of the V-Rod, the two great brands approached things in a rather interesting way. Porsche engineers indeed contributed to the development of the new revolution, but to maintain authenticity, the engine was based on the racing Harley-Davidson. The Revolution engine in the V-Rod can confidently be considered the street version of the VR1000 engine. According to Harley-Davidson engineer Joe Schaefer, they maintained the VR architecture. Both the Revolution and the V-Rod have features that were not previously found in Harley-Davidson engines. We can start with the cylinder angle of 60 degrees, which is 15 degrees more than that of Harley-Davidson's air-cooled engines. The Revolution V-Rod featured a completely new engine architecture for production Harley-Davidson. Dual overhead camshafts, 4 valves per cylinder, a one-piece crankshaft, side-by-side connecting rods, and sliding bearings. As for the motorcycle as a whole, there are no new technologies, but for Harley-Davidson, the engine is truly revolutionary. Both also use an intermediate shaft in the cylinder bank to drive the timing chain, a method that allows for the use of smaller sprockets on the camshafts and creates more compact cylinder heads. And the most noticeable similarity between the two engines is liquid cooling. It is not difficult to find the influence of Porsche within the Revolution. The screw chain adjusters of the GR-MVR have been replaced with hydraulic tensioners that look as if they could definitely be from a 911 or Boxster engine. Throughout the engine, you can also find the inscription "Made in Germany." To prove the reliability of the engine, Porsche conducted a test in Dusseldorf, during which the V-twin ran for 500 consecutive hours. The engine did not fail once. As a result, the new engine with a displacement of 1,130 cubic centimeters produced 115 horsepower and 100 newton meters of torque. The engine was high revving. The red zone began at 9,000 RPM. The compact and technologically advanced Batwing pushed the 280 kilogram body to a top speed of 220 kilometers per hour, which is quite impressive for this class of motorcycle and for such a displacement. The motorcycle completed a quarter mile in 11.7 seconds. In 2008, the displacement was increased to 1250 cubic centimeters, and the power grew to 125 horsepower. There was also a version, called the V-Rod Destroyer. Its 1,300 cubic centimeters engine produced over 165 horsepower. The motorcycle was not allowed on public roads, and testing it on drag racing strips without a professional license was prohibited. The image of the drag bike was built quite successfully. The clutch is also in the same position. The clutch drive on the VR and V-Road engines is not accomplished using the typical 3-row primary chain from Harley. The racing VR uses simple straight-cut gears, while the V-Road. Due to the tightening of noise regulations worldwide, a 5-speed transmission from the German supplier Getrag was used, the manufacturer of transmissions for BMW motorcycles. It uses helical gears that are very similar to those used in cars for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th gears, the very ones they accidentally used in European noise level tests. According to the engineer, the Getrag, which used helical gears, produced a noise level 2 decibels lower than a transmission with straight-cut gears. The style of the machine was intended to be in the best traditions of drag racing vehicles. Even when standing still, the bike had to look fast and brutal. The elegant fuel tank was actually an air filter box. The plastic tank itself was hidden under the seat, again style. The designers did not want to see a bulky air filter on the side of the engine, like on other Harley models. The massive yet elegant exhaust system was also designed to match the overall design of the motorcycle. The design team also had a clear vision of how the V-Rod frame should look. They wanted it to literally frame the engine like a picture frame. Unlike most other Harleys, the frame around the V-twin engine would be very prominent, so it was vital for it to look good. From an engineering perspective, it is equally important that it is rigid enough for good handling. The large pipes were good because they provide sufficient strength and a brutal appearance. The massive pipes were also highly regarded in engineering terms for their rigidity, as resistance to bending increases exponentially with diameter. 1.5-inch pipes were selected. All joints were welded by a robot to achieve clear, well-processed seams. The upper frame tubes have complex bends that would have been impossible to create several years ago. They are now produced using hydroforming techniques. The front and lower parts of the frame can be unscrewed to allow for engine removal. Similarly, the engineers carefully considered the details of the radiator. Willie G could not afford an Evrot with a square radiator painted black, like on some Japanese cruiser models. The radiator must be an integral part of the design, he says. Black paint won't make it invisible. The solution emerged when engineers were conducting tests in the wind tunnel. It became clear that the space immediately behind the front wheel was closed off from the airflow. Therefore, they came up with the idea of creating side air intakes that would collect clean air and direct it to the radiator. The distinctive buckets were made from the same signature aluminum that covered almost the entire motorcycle. The wings, false tank, and radiator covers were made of anodized aluminum and were coated with only a thin layer of clear acrylic. After all, Willie G's letters did their job. And although the appearance clearly fit into the cruiser genre, it was quite unusual. And of course, the disc wheels complemented the stunning custom appearance. In terms of handling, a Harley feels more stable than any other cruiser when you take it out on the track. However, the riding position makes it clear that cornering was not the main priority on this motorcycle's to-do list. It behaves somewhat unpredictably and a bit unstably. This may be due to the fact that the motorcycle was lighter than all its competitors. However, the V-Road brake very well, about as effectively as it accelerated. Overall, it is a stylish, beautiful, and large motorcycle with an engine that has serious torque in the mid to upper RPM range, decent suspension, and excellent brakes. He loves semi-empty streets, moderately winding country roads, and the necks of people who have a basic understanding of two-wheeled technology turning. The V-Rod definitely does not fit into any of the niches created by Harley-Davidson before. It expands the perception of what Harley-Davidson can be from a technological, aesthetic, and functional standpoint. By making such a significant break with its traditions, Harley-Davidson created a motorcycle that appealed to a new type of customer and became popular worldwide. The motorcycle that sparked a real war among Japanese manufacturers. The first production bike in the world with ram air, which held the world speed record for 6 years, and the first representative of a completely new class of motorcycles. The Kawasaki ZZR 1100, or ZX11, is the first true hyperbike. By the time the ZX11 was created, Kawasaki already had several years of experience with impressive models such as the GPZ 1000RX and ZX10 Tomcat. Both were an evolution of the 1984 GPZ 900 and utilized many lessons learned from that machine to create an almost perfect high-capacity sport motorcycle. I would like to remind you that at that time, the class of sport touring as we understand it today simply did not exist. Although the engine of the ZX11 looks identical to the engine of the ZX10, in reality, no parts from the two power units are interchangeable. In the pursuit of maximum power, Kawasaki truly did everything possible by reinforcing the connecting rods, increasing the valves, and raising the peak RPM by 500 thanks to a strengthened crankshaft. nose of the fairing also featured an air duct that directed airflow through a 15-liter airbox hidden beneath the fuel tank before it was pressurized and sent through 40mm carburetors directly into the engine. This technology is called ram air. You can learn more about it in our special edition dedicated entirely to it. The ZX-11 was the first production motorcycle to use ram air. Another innovation of the ZZR was the compact camshaft drive, which allowed the valves to be positioned at a steeper angle. It is 27% lighter than previous Kawasaki systems. To ensure a large fuel reserve, the engine was tilted forward by 2 degrees, which also adds extra load to the front for improved handling. The motorcycle was so powerful for its time that many doubted the practicality of such a bike in principle, fearing that the public would not be able to handle the task of controlling such power. As a result, the ZX-11, or Kawasaki ZZR 1100, appeared in 1990. The Kawasaki ZZR 1100 set 3 world records, doing a quarter mile in 10.1 seconds, with 127 horsepower on the dynamometer and a top speed of 285 kilometers per hour. It became the fastest production motorcycle in the world. This record lasted for a full 6 years before the Honda Contender appeared. What else was good about this innovative machine? The acceleration of the arm straightening definitely deserves a mention, but in a sport touring bike. The comfort factor is also important. The ZX-11 also excels in this regard. It is spacious and can accommodate 2 people comfortably covering miles on the road. With a range of over 320 kilometers on a single tank, it's quite convenient to do this. The ZZR seems like a large motorcycle by any standard. The fairing from the air intake at the front smoothly transitions into the long side panels. The rear part of the tail fairing is also elongated, which corresponds to the overall design and balances the entire look. The company stated that it was the most aerodynamic fairing created by the brand at that time. The bike is huge and makes everyone, except the largest riders, feel visual discomfort. But surprisingly, when you sit on it and touch the controls, such as the footpegs and handlebars, the bike feels much smaller and actually turns out to be very comfortable. In motion, all the weight disappears and the large sport touring bike resembles its predecessors more closely. For such a large and long machine, the handling was simply magnificent. It seemed as if it didn't care at all about its size and considerable dry weight of 228 kilograms. It's hard to say how he does it, but one thing is clear: all the predecessor motorcycles are also magnificent. The GPZ 1000 and ZX-10 were excellent motorcycles, and this was reflected in the ZZR. The engine is flexible. It doesn't need high RPMs for ease of use, but it truly becomes more powerful as the speed increases. The revolutionary ram air effect for its time was indeed noticeable, allowing the engine to develop around 150 horsepower at high speeds. Although they were not allowed to use the EX-SAPI valve due to Yamaha's patents, Kawasaki circumvented this with a 4x1x2 exhaust system. Kawasaki claims that the system increases power at low and mid-range and provides ultra-smooth power delivery above 5,000 RPM. The lack of any serious competition meant that the Kawasaki ZZR 1100 remained unchanged except for a few minor updates and color scheme changes over the next 6 years. In 1996, Honda came back with a true vengeance, spending time developing the 1100XX Super Blackbird. And 3 years later, the elite gang of hyperbikes gained another member with the arrival of the Suzuki Hayabusa. Kawasaki updated the ZX-11 to the ZX-12 in 2002 and then to the ZX-14 in 2006. It it was a real race among manufacturers, where thrushes were eaten by peregrine falcons, and peregrine falcons were preyed upon by spiders and bird eaters. But it was the ZZR 1100 that set everything in motion. For a motorcycle manufacturer, there is no better way to enter a new decade than to release an innovative high-performance machine. Kawasaki not only handled this task with ease, but also added new categories to the motorcycle classifications by combining the attributes of sport and touring motorcycles together to form a new class of hyperbikes.
In times when motorcycle manufacturers are neck and neck, with the market filled with worthy, equally matched machines, the company that almost entered this race last once again annihilates the entire motorcycle industry with its creation. And it paid off at Kawasaki. Everything was in place to build this beast. 135 years of experience in various industries, ranging from shipbuilding to the aerospace division. For example, in 1941, Yamaha produced excellent grand pianos and upright pianos. At that time, Suzuki was producing the best weaving machines, and Honda was not yet known, while Kawasaki was manufacturing aircraft engines with 850 and 1,000 horsepower for Japanese fighters, which gave American pilots a run for their money in the skies over Pearl Harbor. For new speeds, the aerospace division developed a unique body kit, more akin to MotoGP fairings, with winglets for better downforce. The same division borrowed the technology for the turbine impeller drive of the new H2R. The peak crankshaft rotation reaches 14,000 RPM. The impeller, due to the design features of the drive, achieves a speed of 130,000 RPM. By the way, the supercharger wheel is formed from an aluminum blank on a special 5-axis machine. To achieve extreme power, it is crucial to prevent premature ignition. The anti-knock technology used in the construction of the H2R was borrowed from the 18-cylinder green engine. In Japan, Kawasaki is a pioneer in robotics with over 40 years of experience. The robotic arm made a significant contribution to the construction of the high-tech chassis of the H2R. The seams made by the robot arm are refined by a highly skilled Kawasaki specialist, who completes the high-precision manufacturing. Unlike any other production model, the Kawasaki H2R is assembled by hand to achieve higher assembly quality. Manual adjustment of the valve clearances is a prime example of the high precision in assembly. Special adjustment washers, requiring double the precision, were necessary for the high output power of the engine. At the Kawasaki Wakashi factory, a separate area is designated for the assembly of the H2R. High attention to every stage of assembly ensures outstanding performance and quality. The unique mirror-like reflective paint finish is achieved through a chemical reaction using a layer of pure silver. Naturally, all of this is equipped with the best components on the market, such as the racing suspension from KYB, the electronic steering damper from Yolens, the braking system and hydraulic clutch from Brembo, a slipper clutch, and a dog ring-type transmission. After all this, there's just one question left. How fast can this monster go? The answer to our question will come from top motorcycle journalists around the world. This motorcycle is not a racing bike, but it can go faster than a MotoGP motorcycle. The approach to creation was completely different. Everything was unique for us, and we wanted to build a very, very special machine. This thing is just unreal. It's like a MotoGP prototype, but with acceleration. It's something else. My brain is still refusing to comprehend how amazing and fast this motorcycle is. You twist the throttle and then
boom. Every time you accelerate, and yes, the brakes are impressive, you can experience colossal acceleration that no other motorcycle can give you.
It's fast. Not just a little faster. It's much, much faster. The motorcycle performs excellently not only on the track, but also on public roads, setting new records time and again. For example, James Hiller set the TT speed record on a Kawasaki Ninja H2R, achieving a top speed of about 331.5 kilometers per hour, an absolute record for motorcycles ever to race on the Isle of Man track. I knew this motorcycle would shock me, but I didn't expect it to this extent. The first 3 gears are just unreal. The H2R easily takes on any motorcycle. For example, just look at how effortlessly it overtakes the legendary Hayabusa, or against the MotoGP replica Aprilia SRT, or the current favorite S1000RR. Forget about motorcycles. No production car can stand up to it, whether it's the 550 horsepower Audi R8 or the Bugatti Veyron with 1,200 horsepower on board. The only one that could compete with it in acceleration is the tuned 1,350 horsepower GTR. But since this is no longer the limit, the H2R from the Trickstar workshop can confidently be put up against it, as they aim to surpass the 400 kilometers per hour mark, though their best result so far is around 385 kilometers per hour. But that's not the limit either. A rider named Cananzo Fugler accelerated this motorcycle to 400 kilometers per hour in an astonishing 26 seconds. Moreover, he reached the first 300 in just 8 seconds. In comparison, the average leader sport bike takes about 8 seconds to reach 200 kilometers per hour. Many people don't fully understand the point or purpose of this unique motorcycle, and I'm ready to suggest that the Ninja H2R is primarily needed by Kawasaki as a prestigious calling card. So to speak, we can build a motorcycle with over 300 horsepower that is both track-friendly and stable at extreme speeds, since there's still no response from other manufacturers. Yes, Kawasaki has once again left everyone in the dust.